Hello, everyone, and welcome to our another session on disability inclusion in South Asia. The aim of this session is to promote the rights of people with disabilities. 1 billion people, or about 15% of the world's population, experience some sort of disability. And persons with disabilities, on an average, as a group, are more likely to experience some adverse socioeconomic outcomes than people without disabilities. In this session, we at FNF would like to aim to discuss the issues that a group faces while trying to get a job and how these issues can be addressed. To begin with, I would first like to introduce our guest speaker today, Mr. Yankee Pusun. He is the head of Hessen State Parliament in Germany. He has been a spokesperson for disability policy since January 18, 2019, and he's also a part of Social Integration Policy Committee. May I please invite you, Mr. Pusun, to give your remarks? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you invited me. My name is Yankee Pusun. I'm both a member of the Frankfurt City Council and the State Parliament of Hessen, which is one of the 16 states of Germany. I was elected quite young to the Frankfurt City Council, and there I was also responsible for social politics on people with disabilities. And some 3 years ago, I was elected to the State Parliament, and also there I'm member of the Social Committee, which deals with the issues of people with disabilities. Germany is an aging society, so these issues, social issues, and the rights of people with disabilities becomes more and more important. We have, of course, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. It was adopted in 2006. In Germany, it went into force in 2009. And the federal level, the federal government started a process of inviting organizations and interested people to create a plan of action and to introduce the right measures to improve the situation of people with disabilities. Of course, this was then done also on a state level in all 16 states of Germany. And after that, of course, it was continued on the municipal level. We have hundreds, maybe thousands of municipalities in Germany. And of course, policies shall not only be theory on the federal level, but also practice on every state level. As you mentioned, also in Germany, we have around 15% of the population with disabilities. The figure is rising. There was the absolute number rose by 9% between 2009 and 2017. And of course, as I said, German society is aging, so this figure is rising and rising. What's also interesting, it's rising very fast in the group of migrants, because when they came, they were young, but now they are also getting older. So the number of people with disabilities in between the migrants, it's also rising. And of course, maybe the case in every country, the figure in the group of people above 80 is 50%. So every second in this age group is part of this group where we focus on. Let me give you some positive examples and, of course, unfortunately, some negative examples of the current German situation. One of the positive developments is that the rate of unemployment is going down, not fast, but still it's going down. Between 2015 and 2019, the unemployment rate decreased from 13.4% to 11.2%. Slight increase, but of course it's positive. Then we have a special form of housing. It's serviced housing, where people come during the day and get all kind of assistance. And this, the number of these people rose by 22% between 2014 and 2018. So we can provide more service to such people than in the past. What is also very important, and which is one of the focuses of the implementation of the UN Convention is that we change our public transport system so that people with disabilities can use public transport on their own. Of course, when there are other people, they can assist them, but the stations and the wagons should be that way that they can use it on their own. There's still a long way to go, but when we look at the statistics, we have some 80% of the train stations, bus stations, which can be used, some 50% of the gates at the stations, and some 60% of the buses. So still we are not at 100%, but we are working on it. Of course, if you already have all these things, the stations and the buses, it's quite expensive to change them. Another positive development is the participation in elections. Of course, people with disabilities have the same democratic rights, the same citizen rights as others, and there should be no obstacle for them to participate in democracy. And the participation in elections rose, and it is not quite, there's no more gap left between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. And what's very interesting, people with disabilities are more interested in politics than people without disabilities, which is a very important information for politicians, of course, and also for society. When we look at the negative trends in Germany, then we have that people with disabilities feel that they do not have as much social participation like people without disabilities. Of course, this is something we have to focus on and work on. Every third person with disabilities feels alone. So it has less social contacts. They, even at a higher rate, live alone. And they feel that they get less assistance from society than people without disabilities. No matter at which figure we look, we see a big gap between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. So we have to focus on this. And when we look at the question of education and also professional education, there has been some efforts in Germany to include people with disabilities into the ordinary schools and to have less special schools, so that it is a normality in a society that you live in many spheres together and not separated. We have some progress, but it's not enough. And especially when we look at the people with disabilities that get professional education, we see no rise in the figures, so it's quite constant. And this is also the second point we have to focus on. And the third negative point in Germany is that when we compare the state of health of people with disabilities and people without disabilities, we see that their health status is worse. So we have 13% of people with disabilities who feel that they are in a good health status. People without disabilities feel, 60% of them feel that they are in a good health. So it's 1 to 4. 13% with disabilities, 60% without. So it's a huge gap. And this is also something we have to focus on in Germany, especially. Of course, we had the Corona crisis, and no one should be left behind. The society should be ready, should be open. It should be aware of all the things we have to do. And yeah, I'm very happy if I could give you some insight in the German situation. And I'm happy to listen what you have to, you can report from your region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Christian, for giving us this insight into what is going into Germany. And it's really great to know that at least the unemployment rate in Germany is going down. Thank you very much. And now I would like to quickly introduce our panel today. Today, our moderator is Ms. Sampa Sen Gupta. She is an activist working on disability and gender issue for more than 30 years. She's the founder director of Shruti Disabilities Rights Center, which is a non-funded advocacy group that works on the intersection of disability and gender rights. Our speaker from Nepal is Gajendra Buddha Thoki. He is a National Journalism Award winner from Nepal. He's an editor-in-chief for Socioeconomic magazine and a group editor of Socio Media Group. He's also a winner of the Developing Asia Journalism Award, National Journalism Award, and actually the list is quite long, so I'll just quickly skip that. And I would just say that he has received quite a few awards from the institutions of the economic and social security related studies. Next, we have the another speaker that we have is from India is P.V. Madhusudan Rao. He is a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Design at the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. He also serves as Dean of Alumni Relations, and he is a co-founder of Assistic Labs and IIT Delhi, which works towards the development of assistive technologies for the empowerment of the visually challenged. He is also a recipient of a national award twice by the Ministry of Science and Technology. And our final speaker is from Sri Lanka, Nilshani De Silva. She is fondly known as Nili. She's 22 years old, born with Down syndrome. Nili is a senior girl guide and was awarded with the Prime Minister's Award for Guiding and the Medal for Special Achievements last year. She has also been awarded the Reaching of for the Stars Award by the Sri Lanka Association for Child Development. Yeah, that was just a very quick introduction about our panel. And Ms. Singh Gupta, now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the organizers, to Shruti and everyone who have joined today. And I'm so happy to hear about the progress report and from Germany. I have very little experience of working in Germany, and it was 30 years ago. I worked at a inclusive school for where children both with disability and without disabilities came and were studying. And I fondly remember how inclusion was important even then. It was near Frankfurt at Offenbach, in a small town. Yeah, so when we were talking about the condition of Germany, I mean, a lot of memories was coming in because 30 years ago when I worked there, I saw small children coming. They must be all those children are now grown up adults. So of course we didn't have social media those days, so we are not in touch. So, but one wonders how these children are faring right now, and it's so good to know that at least the employment scenario is better. I mean, because employment is something. When we're talking about persons with disabilities, it's something a very, very severe area of concern. Education and employment. So I was just looking at the United Nations data today. This morning, it says that 80% to 90% of adults with disabilities are unemployed. And this is a data from all over the world. So which is a very, very serious concern for all of us. We know that in many countries, the government are trying to bring in laws. In my country, I'm from India, so Indian government we have a progressive law which talks about employment benefits, both for people who are, I mean, there are reservations in jobs in the government sector. For private companies, they're given some benefits if you employ a certain number of disabled people. But the scenario is not improving as much as we would like to see. Of course, it's also employment and education are related things. That is something we need to remember. Because if people with disabilities are not coming so much for education, higher education, we are not seeing a high number of people coming in. So, so they are not also getting into employment. Two things are very related. I'd like to first call in Mr. Gajendra, because I think it's very interesting because you are from media fraternity, and we all need that, how much we need media help, how much we look forward to hear people from journalism who come and work with the sector, the disability sector. And I was just seeing your background. It says that you have worked with the disability sector apart from your work as a journalist. So, and we need a lot of awareness which media can give. So, can you just tell us a little bit about maybe the current laws of Nepal, particularly about persons with disabilities, how it says employment, and so if you can start with that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sampada. First of all, I want to introduce myself as a disability warrior. I called myself as a disability warrior because I am also wheelchair user. Not only my claim is that I am a first wheelchair user journalist, editor in Southeast Asia. So I'm also from this community also. So, and as a journalist who are working in the mainstream media, I have some issues with the media issue. Later I will go on. Can I share my PowerPoint? I have prepared one my PowerPoint. So I want to share. Okay. Yeah. Nepal, rights of the people with the disability community enriched in our constitution in under the right of the social security also. And Nepal has already signed CPRD, the UN Convention already, and prepared law according to it. And our the Disability Right Act 2015 is very much progressive act, we call that, we have already in our Nepal. We have some inaccessibility issues to entrance and the accessibility. Policy level provisions is on incomplete, discriminatory, and inaccessible infrastructure and system we have. That is not only the issues of Nepal. This is the major issues in South Asia. All the system we have in South Asia, the infrastructure is very poor for the disabled people. People with disability cannot have a good accessible infrastructure in South Asia. And this is the not issues of infrastructure only. This is the problem of the mentality. And our society in South Asia, especially I am focusing in South Asia, negative mindset evaluate for the people with disability. And they projected that the people with disability cannot do anything. They didn't have any capability to do anything. So that is the major problem we are facing in Nepal and especially in South Asia. And the people with disability looking for the good opportunities, and when they are working for the any environment, and the not good responsibility given to them, because already I have told that is the problem with the mentality. And they said the people with the disability cannot do that thing. Why we have to give them such a good opportunity? So that is a discriminated mindset we have facing in our continent. In Nepal, we have some data issues also. Our national census 2011 says the only 2% of Nepalese people are have some kind of disability. But as you Shruti told, and we have one data from the UN WTO, and World Bank have prepared one for the world's first disability report. That report tell us around the 15% of world's population, especially like Nepal, countries like Nepal, India, have more than 15% people have some kind of disability. But we have our national data shows only 2%, and India have, I think Sampada will be correct me, India have 3% or 4% only they showing. Recently, Nepal has concluded new census. I hope the census data will be correct in our data system. I have included some data. There was, they called only 2% of Nepalese people, and only 280,000 male are disabled people, they said, and that is the very little bit data, and 233,000 women are disabled. So the data is very contradictory, as I told. I have also already, I have split data also included here, but I cannot explain it. I'm going with some issues. Due to the lack of the availability of the eminence of the opportunity in rural areas, settlement of the number of people with disability has been largely concentrated in the urban areas in our country, especially in Nepal. That is the same issues I have read in India also. And it is estimated that around 250,000 people with disability are living only in Kathmandu Valley only. That is the capital city of Nepal, for source of education, job, and a livelihood. There was policy for implementation of provision to positive discrimination of people with disability in any type of employment that are arises or created in government level, but not fully implemented in province and government level. So we have, Nepal have implemented the federal structure since 2050, but in local and province level government, they have not implemented full this kind of positive discrimination issues in employment of regarding with people with disability. Our existing income tax act of Nepal has provision of tax exemption of up to 50% for the people with disability and their taxable income. And few years back, government issued a special provision for government will provide a special tax exemption for those enterprises who are provided more than 50% employment for women and power people with disability. But this provision is not fully implemented till now. Almost all the government officers expect some little bit, and roads, paths, and parks are not disability friendly. School, colleges, university are not seen with true about the disabled people could be for their student. They are not thinking the people with disability and the student with disability are also came to their colleges, schools. They are not thinking that, and the whole infrastructure not is a disability friendly. The concept need for the people with disability still have not emerged in private industries, business and corporate foundations, hotels, restaurants, and theaters. They are also found indifferent about the people with disability they can do as also to be their employees, service provider, or clients. In Nepal, Nepal government has provided a little bit of social security allowances. Instead, since a few years back, the government has started providing social security allowances to the people with disability, but it is very much biased and insufficient. As the present government distributes 4 types of categories of identity cards for the people with disability. incomplete, category 1, complete disability, category 2, short disability, category 3, mild disability, and general disability. The government provided rupees 3,000, $30 as a social security allowance for the completely disability. That is, the card was given with the red card. The red card holder, disabled people, gets 3,000 rupees. And whereas only 2,100 rupees, only $20 provided for the short disability. And in the government categorization, the people with complete disability and the short disability is little bit of difference, because both have to take help for their livelihood, but the government's provision for the social security allowances is huge different in these two categories. According to the government statistics, there was 600,000 people in living with disability through the country, but the only 350,000 people has getting the identity card, and only half of them are getting the social security allowances. I have already told that the tax exemption about issues. I have explained that in Income Tax Act 2002 provides for the tax exemption for the people with disability. In the case of a disabled person or single or couple with disability, the income tax law provides for the some exemption in the income of those such disability. As addition, 50% tax exemption for the provided for the people with disability in the income tax free threshold, and some same provisions for the upper income slab also. So we have some in this session we are talking about the employment issues. So our right of the Peoples with Disability Act 2008 prioritized job guarantee for the disabled. The law appreciated is advanced, but it is not also implemented. The act has defined and classified 10 different types of disabilities, and clearly indication for the rights of the people with disability, including the education, health, employment, and other issues of livelihood. According to the Inclusive Policy of Public Service Commission, 2066 BS, that is they have provided 5% of total employment for the people with disability is categorized for the in public service. Now the percentage of reducing 3%, and the bill was on parliament but not passed till now. It is in discussion. So right for the people with disability. Oh, sorry, this is the. In our total request required post in civil service in Nepal is 1,27,000, and total working force is 89,000. The only people with disability working in the civil service is only 1,000. It is less. It is nearby the 1% only. And when the inclusive policy was implemented 10 years back, the very much disabled people with disability are applying for the jobs, but they are getting little bit of performance. And nowadays, people are applying little bit than 10 years back. So it is very, very disappointed issues for us. And our major concern with in South Asia, we have government has provided some little bit of quotas for people with disability in Nepal, in India, but private sector didn't have implemented that laws. or issue issues. The private sector of Nepal has been unconcerned about the people of the disability. We have organized one job fair for the people with disability 3 years continuously, and very much application we have get it. But the private sector didn't encourage to give them job, and also they have a good education quality, good trainings, but private sector didn't came in front to provide jobs for the people with disability. A private sector of Nepal didn't implement the provisions of the recruit people with disability in priority. Previously appointed, they previously appointed some people with disability, and after working for the some years, and they are starting discriminating with these people. So private sector, only we have only two quotable, and so we are there is a good practice. One called Nangro Bakery. They provided 100% DIF for the job for the 100% DIF. Special cafe run in our new Baneswar, Kathmandu, and one called Bhatbhatani Supermarket. They also provided for the deaf people some job in disabled people. But another private sector issues, private sector companies didn't provided some special jobs for the people, especially wheelchair user, who people with physical disability didn't get jobs in our Nepal. As Sampada said, we are also talking about our problems. A problem in the infrastructure, policy level, and mentality in both education and job for the people with disability. Physical infrastructure are not disabled friendly. Reservation in the government jobs to the people with disability ensure that the limited portion have been enjoying. Especially physically disabled people are not deprived from the participation. People with disabled cannot do, their performance is weak. The trend of looking down up down to disabled people in society. This is the mentality, they said. Discrimination in equal wages also. Same job is doing by the non-disabled people and people with disability, but the discrimination in their job occupation, their salary integration, those problems are existing in our system. Representation, reservation are not only for the solution, but importantly, implementation is the main part for our changes. So we need to change mentality of our society. Thank you. This is my just rough presentation.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to you. We'll have a question answer session after we hear from the other panelists. What I feel is, of course, there are many similarities between Nepal and India. Of course, we know that even in India, roads are not accessible, transports. We also ratified UNCRPD. We have a new law, yet implementation is not what we expected till now. With that comment, I request Professor Madhusudan Rao to speak about his experiences. And since Professor Rao is also working a lot with assistive technology, and technology can play a very, very important role in lives of persons with disabilities. So I do hope that you can give us, Professor Rao can give us some insights from his experience of role of technology, along with when he talks about the employment scenario of persons with disabilities.
Shampa, thanks for those comments. So, yeah, I think I am actually a professor in a technical university, and I've been working for 15 years in disability and assistive technology. So, coming to the India and situation, I think already some mention has been made. So, India actually had the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act in 2016. That is almost 10 years after UNCRPD was launched. And in this particular act, 21 different type of disabilities have been identified. And there are a lot of very interesting, I think, policies have been made around it. But as Shampa mentioned, there are still, India has many, many challenges to go through. So one of them, which was also mentioned probably by Gajendra, is also a social outlook about with a disability more from the charity perspective rather than the empowerment perspective. Okay. Now, that actually, when you look from the charity perspective, the notion is that a person cannot probably perform as good as any normal person and has to do a very different type of things. But the moment you think of empowerment, you actually bring them and make them participate like anyone, and empower them to do all the things which anybody would probably do. And this transition is happening. There is a change which is happening, which is slow, but I think slowly it is happening. But unlike Gajendra mentioned, a lot of our people with disabilities are still in rural areas and hidden, and bringing them to limelight or to actually the focus is still a major challenge which we are looking. But having worked on assistive technology, let me also bring, we have probably, because some of our products have reached more than 100,000 people, particularly in India and various other parts of country. But assistive technology really has a great power to empower people with disabilities and bring a major social transformation. So what we have seen, I have a number of stories, maybe I'll use some other occasion to share that, is a person who is generally considered as a socially dependent. The moment you give assistive technology, you can actually make them mobile, you can educate, and you can, which also fetches an employment. So what we saw that if you really want to bring an employment, education is a precursor. And if you want to educate, mobility is also a precursor in India particularly. A person should be able to mobile. And in both education and mobility, assistive technology plays a very, very important role. And for last few years, some of the assistive technologies which we have developed has reached a very small percentage of people. But we have also seen people who were considered to be socially dependent suddenly become a socially prosperous for the family. And these transformations are happening, but still not in large numbers. The idea or the goal is to see that this process is accelerated as much as possible. And even when it comes to assistive technology, even if we want to take assistive technology to people to empower them, there are major challenges. There are awareness challenges. Many people are not aware of the power of assistive technology. And affordability is another very important, because most of the people with disabilities in countries such as India also come from weaker socioeconomic conditions, and affordability is still an issue. And the government programs to provide access to assistive technologies is very small, and still is not able to reach out to all the people. And hence, in India, we have a great potential. There is a great opportunity, but I think still a large work has to be done. There's one more very interesting situation which we have seen particularly in Southeast Asia and South Asia is that there are two models to look at disability. One which is more like a social model, and second which is more like a health care related model. And India has still not adapted, like many other countries, the disability from the healthcare models. In other words, many of the hospitals will not have, we have a wonderful hospitals in India which do preventive care, which do curative care. But I think when it comes to rehabilitative care, we still are not very, we are not very much there. And many of the hospitals, including tertiary hospitals and secondary hospitals, need to have a big rehabilitative programs which are still needed. And I think that is one thing which country is trying to correct, but I think a lot more has to be done. And coming to the employment of person with people with disabilities, I would look at from two perspectives. One which is one where we had a good news is that more and more people are being employed in information technology companies. Particularly, India is very big in terms of IT companies, and some of the companies which have started recruiting people about 10 years back are extremely satisfied in employing people with this thing. And many of them are actually also multinational companies which have come to India to have their IT, and they have recruited. Now, two things were found. One is that the kind of performance and the output was far more satisfactory than the normal person, which is a very important. And I think our German, like the Germany also has a similar model, as we heard that. And second thing, which many companies have found and now more and more are looking at, is that the attrition rates is very, very small with people with disabilities. They are actually more loyal to a companies, and that actually made people to actually bring more into that. But when it comes to particularly a labor market where people have to work with a physical environments like factories, etc., we have a very, very low penetration of people with disabilities. That is also because of various reasons. One is also that the working environments are still not very, very inclusive. That requires companies which are employing to do a lot of changes and be inclusive in terms of employing the people with this. This is still has happened in a very small way, but I think it still needs to be done in a very big way, which is there. But what we see is that there is a very high potential to do that. And wherever it happened, for example, the employment of people with disabilities, some of the companies were actually trying to look more from the functionality perspective. But I think they soon realized that functionality is only one element of a disability. But I think what is more needed is ability to do things independently, and participation, which was also mentioned earlier, were very, very key. And that actually still requires more work to be done For example, a lot of people with disabilities were employed in banks, but sometimes they were also given a type of a jobs which probably which were more like a routine and more of monotonous. So, but when some of the banks actually try to use assistive technologies, and particularly for people with visual impairment, they found that people can actually be far more productive and can outperform a normal person when you actually go with when you actually empower them with the assistive technologies, which is very important. And also, I also wanted to mention last 2 years, not only for persons with disabilities, but even for the normal public, the employment situation went very bad. And when it comes to people with disabilities, it was even worse, because even the education for people with disabilities was a major challenge. But it also gave us a lesson that how to be prepared to address the accessibility challenges during emergencies and particularly during disasters. And it made us realize that not only India, but most of the world was not prepared to bring the same accessibility levels during emergencies and during pandemic. And I think that actually brought a completely new subject. How do you actually bring the accessibility during disasters and others? And we are still trying to learn from that. So overall, what I would say is that things are changing slow. We also see a very bright side, but I think the pace at which things are happening really needs an acceleration, if you particularly for a country like India to make an impact. Since I also come from an assistive technology area, I see a bright side. Very recently, India had, during last 10 years, close to about 700 startups in assistive technology space. So that is the bright side I see. There are many interesting new assistive technologies are being developed. About 10% of them have already hit the market. But as more and more new assistive technologies were put into market, we are still optimistic that there is a major transformation is possible if we have right policies. I think I'll for the time being, I'll stop there and probably come back again, Shampa.
Thank you so much, Professor. Yeah, of course, we need more faster pace. I agree with you. There are a lot of things happening in the disability sector in India, but I think it's quite slow, and so it brings a lot of frustration. And technology, particularly because we are still COVID is still period, we are still in COVID period. It's not over, so we realize that how much important role technology can play in our lives. So we all became dependent totally on technology last 2 years. So that's also a lesson. I mean, we all need to learn lessons from whatever situation we are in. Whenever there's some difficult situation, a disaster happens, and COVID has taught us the importance of technology, and technology for all. That is something we should strive for very soon. We'll definitely come back to you. We have a question answer session, but I'll go to my next speaker, Nishani De Silva. Nili, it's such a pleasure to have you today in this meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going through your biodata, and I can see that you are now teaching in a you're teaching craft in a school. So you are, can you give us tell us about your experience of, like, you had in what was your experience as a student and now as a teacher? So if you can talk a little bit about it.
I was the first special needs child that was accepted to my school. At first, no one knew how to include me in a school setting. The teachers didn't know how to handle a special needs child in their class. But my speech therapist helped advise my school, and I was kept in a normal class with all my friends. The school was very positive and made more changes to help include me and let me do my best. For example, the school allowed a shadow teacher to be with me in the class. I was kept with the very bright students, and my friends were all in the one class until we left school. My classes were moved to the ground floor as it was difficult for me to climb the steps. I was also involved in all school activities and was a senior girl guide. Having friends in school really helped me and encouraged and and we are still very close even now. After I left school, I was keen to find a job like my friends. I was good at craft, so my school hired me as a craft teacher. When I started working, the principal informed the staff that that I should be treated just like other teachers. For example, I get a salary like a normal teacher. When I was a student, everyone called me Nili. But even now, even my own teachers call me Miss Nilshani. I am allowed to take an assistant with me to help with my work. I teach crafts in grade 2 and grade 3. My students love me and we have fun. This has been a very rewarding and I love being a teacher.
It is really nice to know that your school is giving you equal opportunities and treating you as equal with other teachers. But we really do not see that happening in a lot of companies. So if you can talk a little bit about how companies can address the inclusion issue, other companies apart from the school.
First, the company must create a positive attitude towards those with disabilities. They should be given a job they are good at and they can do. The workplace must be safe and comfortable for them. The company must be willing to make a small changes to support them. If an issue comes up, practical answers should be found without blaming the disability.
Thanks for that answer. I would like to ask you how trust can be built among other employees, because other employees of a company may not feel very happy to have a special person. Yeah.
Sure. The company must inform their staff about hiring someone with disabilities. Staff should be told to treat them just like everybody else, with dignity and respect. Staff should be trained on how to work with people with disabilities. Everyone should understand that we also have equal rights in the workplace.
You talked about very important point, dignity and respect. So we all want, I'm just taking notes of your points because you talked so well. So we all expect respect from society. So how is there any way that the society can make us feel more comfortable, the disabled people more comfortable in the society?
Of course. So society must realize that we are also people, just like them. We are not sick. We also have likes, dislikes, feelings, and needs. We need to be respected and understood. Don't feel sorry for us. Instead, get to know us. Give us a chance and be our friend.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'd also like to call you Miss Nishani because that's your at your school. That is your name they use. It's a really nice name. Thank you so much. We'll actually take some questions and answers. I don't know whether there are already some questions in the chat box. I just wanted to sum up what are the issues that came up is accessibility, non-implementation of law, and we have heard about a very, very positive example of how a school, Ms. Nishani's school actually is practicing inclusion. So, and dignity and respect is something that every disabled person look for. So do we have questions in the chat box so that we can ask? I think Shruti will be helping me. Just give me a second. Let me check if we have any questions. Manjari, yes, Manjari, if you can help me with if there are any questions and if there is, the questions are addressed to any particular speakers. Manjari, I'm waiting for a response from you. There is a question, how can we create a network of companies that can help us create more job opportunities? So this question can be actually answered by any of the speaker. Anyone wants to pick it up? Maybe Professor Rao, if you have any suggestions.
Sure. Yeah. So I think so. One of the things which we also were studying about employment opportunities, particularly for people with disabilities. So there were two important issues which came, which are also related to question. One of the companies asked us, can you come and actually do an audit as to what is the kind of jobs which we can offer to people with disabilities. And when we actually visited, then we realized that firstly, there is no major thing like universal design of industrial equipment, which is there. So that became a major challenge. Second was that how do you accommodate if it is not designed to be operated by people with disabilities. And when we actually did it, then suddenly we had few more companies and actually came and said, we would also like to do. And now there is a small consortium of companies who are actually trying to do a accommodation in the workplaces in order to employ people with disabilities, which has just started. But I would say this is still a very, very beginning in terms of this thing. I won't call it as a big network. It's a very small. The second thing, which we also found that government actually can play a major role. For example, in India, we also have what is called as a CSR. I'm sure many of the many of the countries in the world have what we call as a corporate social responsibility. Now, every company is expected to spend certain budget towards corporate social responsibility. One of the things which we are also discussing with the WHO and government, is it possible for government to also consider maybe there is a mandatory spending on corporate social responsibility, which can be waived off if they employ people with disabilities in their employment. There is a certain percentage of people. If you say that, okay, I am more inclusive, I am more in terms of employment, if you show a larger data, then the idea is that you don't have to spend that mandatory amount on corporate social responsibility, is also one of the things which can actually bring many people to adapt this. But this is still an experiment which needs to be done.
I want to just add, the hotel and restaurant is the best model for the implementing to create a job. Likewise, the chain hotels and restaurant can provide jobs for the people with disability. One of my friend have a restaurant in started a tea restaurant. Only that is the model tea restaurant in Jamshedpur, India. He was trained some people, deaf girls, and he started a tea restaurant in Jamshedpur, India. And now he has expanded his chain into the Myanmar also, Burma also. So we can create some like a chain type of hotel restaurant to provide some model employment for the people with disability. As I mentioned in my PowerPoint, the Nanglo Bakery Cafe in Kathmandu, they started job 100% job for their whole employment of employee are the for the deaf in Banasur. After that, they started another chain in Dharara, nearby Dharara, that is nearby the New Road, and they started the people with we called Hochapudga, the little bit height people, and they provided job for there. So I think the hotel and restaurants are the best model for the chain employment. This is my personal view.
There are two more questions. One question is, how is political support to employment of disabled people in your country? And this is something I think all the countries, all the disability movement of all countries look for political support, because we know that without support of political support, it's very difficult to work. I mean, it's not something we really do not want to remain charity. So you need support of political parties, and not just only government support, political party support also. Would you like to talk a little bit about it, Professor Rao? Then I'll go back to Mr. Gajendra with a different question.
Yeah. So I think very rightly said, because why this is important is, even if you look at some of the best countries in the world, particularly the Western countries, if particularly when I look more from, let's say, assistive technology perspective, it actually reaches the people because the government somewhere actually brings that subsidy which is required for that. So some countries have a system where insurance covers your assistive technology needs. There are some countries where you get a coupon for certain dollars which you can actually encash. Like Gajendra mentioned about Nepal, the amount was very small, but that amount is somewhat substantial in a few countries, which is an important. So it's very true that the role of government is an extremely important, particularly in this particular space, because not many of the assistive technologies are not market driven. Even if I make a wonderful one and put it in a market, unless there is a pull which comes from either insurance or, let's say, from where you give a subsidy, it actually doesn't drive. And that is where the political support and the government support is extremely crucial, and without which I don't think it will even work.
I absolutely agree with you, because without support of without political will, nothing actually can happen in any country. So it's just not. We of course have Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which have a reservation for persons with disabilities. We have a reasonable accommodation mentioned in our law, but until and unless we have a political will of government also, it will just remain a law. Implementation will not happen. So that is something very important. There was a question which Mr. Gajendra can answer, is because you also talked that you are a journalist who uses a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that we do not see a lot of people in media who are disabled too. So how does inclusive, how can we make media more inclusive? How can more disabled people become journalists, join media? Because of course media is again now is opening up. We have different kinds of media, not just print media. So, yes.
Thank you. So last 2 years back, we have did a little bit of regional seminar like this one, not only for virtual, in Kathmandu. Some of my journalists from the India also come, and Pakistan, from Pakistan also, Bangladesh, some from Bangladesh, some from Myanmar also. We have same kind of problem in our media in our continent. I'm also editor, but I frankly told that our editors didn't think that is the major issue for the media. And which issues come to our media is the as the professor told, that is for as the charity issues. If somebody does charity issues for the people with disability, or some kind of they cannot do, then they are poor, they are very much likewise in poor conditions, this type of issues come to our media in South Asia. So we are in Nepal particularly, I'm telling that in Nepal our editors, some editors my editor friends are nowadays very much sensitive on disability, people with disability issues. They make front page issues and television issues. They have special slots available for people with disability issues, and they are rising continuously. But when is you are from India, Samba, and professor from India. When I say I know better Hindi, and we know in Nepal also seeing the Indian channels, I'm very sad with the Indian media, especially the Indian television channel. I'm very much sad because they didn't take people with disability issues in their front page headline news. Never, never, never. And as I told that is the mentality of our editors in South Asia. And even in Nepal, I'm raising the whole issues of people with disability, fighting with the people in social media for the right, right thing. You can to write some issues on social media. Please didn't do that, and I'm telling that, and I am fighting for the social inclusion issues. But our media, I'm very much sad. Only I have did one study, only the 0.2% of news coverage did by the Nepalese media about the people with disability. So we have to change our mentality. Whole in society need to be to be sensitized for the people with disability issues, especially in South Asia. We have same kind of issues, same kind of problems. So I request to all of you, please ask your journalist friend also to raise the issues, because we have same kind of issues in our continent.
Thank you so much. Yes, we definitely need to work much more with media to raise our issues. I'd request Mr. Khitej Bahel now, who will join the floor and give some remarks now.
Yeah, hi. Hello.
Yeah,
Hello, yes, please, sir.
Yes. We run a cafe in Delhi, in India, which employs differently abled people. And our main theme for the cafe is to include as many differently abled people in our workspace as we can. Because what we have found over a period of time is that you cannot sensitize people about an issue unless you make them face that issue. And unless they can come and see how a disabled person can work without any errors, without any problems in a normal environment. We can say that we can print articles or we can try and explain it to them, but unless they come forward and they start working or they see a person working who's differently able, they'll not be able to understand the needs of that person, and they'll not be able to understand how to work with them in harmony. Because the problem that we found is always in the thinking process. People think that they think with pity, or they pity a differently abled person rather than giving them that empathy that they required. Sympathy is not required for them according to us, but empathy is required. That is why we are trying to build an environment where differently able people can come up front and work and showcase their skills to the world. And our aim is to spread this message to maximum people through our initiative, so that more and more business owners can come to the front, wherein they can make little changes to their normal workspace and make it a place which can promote inclusivity for differently abled people. Because until and unless we start giving them those opportunities, they'll never be able to come up front, and they'll not be able to showcase their talent, their skills, which they have. So that is why we always say that we should lead by example, and that is what we are doing at our cafe in Echoes. We have made little changes to the place so that it can be a place which can include differently abled people. Like we work with people who are deaf and mute. So we have placards to help communication with the customers. We have switch buttons wherein a person can press a switch which makes a light go up, thus letting the waiter know which table they are required at. We have the menu ordering process changed completely. If you enter a normal restaurant, you know, like how you place an order is generally a waiter comes with the menu, you decide, and then you speak out your order or you dictate your order to the waiter and they note it down. But we changed that process in our cafe. We ask the customers to write their own orders for us. To simplify that, we've given them dish codes so that they don't have to go in all the dish names and mumbo jumbo, but they can just simply mention the dish codes and the quantity to order, and they can simply press the buzzer, which makes the light goes on. And once the waiter arrives, they can just hand over that leaf of paper to the waiter. So this is not a very big change, but little changes affects. This is what we believe, and this is what we have seen. And initially, when we were opening up this cafe 6 years back, we were kind of skeptical as to how the people will, react on seeing a differently able person working, because sometimes we see that we have this hindrance in our thinking process. Oh, that the person is a differently able person, he'll not be able to work properly, or he'll make mistakes, or they'll do something that shouldn't be done. But when we started giving them that opportunity, we soon found out that they are better at their work than a person with all the capabilities. They are really very focused on their work. They don't try and take shortcuts. They don't try and find another way to do something, but they try and do the things as the things are taught to them. They follow their training procedures, they follow their processes, which makes it a working place which has much less space for errors compared to a normal working space. So we've always found that the thing is that we need to give them that opportunity, and once they have that opportunity, they can always come up to the front and shine.
Thank you so much for that. There is a suggestion, because I think prior to when we were beginning this conversation earlier this evening, there was a suggestion that how we can take this discussion forward, because it shouldn't be a one-off meeting and we forget what we were talking about. So there was a suggestion of how to go about it. And a very good suggestion came in the chat box, which said that we can make a list of all the employers who are taking up giving such a positive work environment for people with disabilities, and maybe making a list of and finding out what are the particular kind of reasonable accommodation, as you were explaining, what are the accommodations you did for the employers. So, and I think that is a kind of work which is very much needed, because we need good examples instead of just talking about that nothing is happening. And so, because other entrepreneurs can also learn from people like you. And we know there are in India, there are a few other cafes who are employing people with disabilities in different cities. So, and what are the kind of challenges, what are the kind of positive examples they are learning. And this examples needs to be documented also. I mean, it's not just a work, because if you document, we can inspire more people to take up this kind of work. I think, is there any more question? Just give me a second.
Shruti Sharma has asked a question that how do we accelerate the assistive tech? Should it be more from government side or a private side? So I thought I'll just answer with your permission.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. I think we probably need a two-pronged strategy. I think which we are presently working on. One is that, as I said, affordability and access definitely requires government to support. In fact, some of the things which are being said to Indian government is, if you can actually provide a vaccine to 1 billion people, why not assistive technology to 1 million people? Okay, so is because all the vaccines came free, and why not assistive technology? So that's one model. How do we actually work at that scale, and what kind of mechanism should be used to reach people is one. The second, the private, I think the role of private companies is also very important, and where I think now there is some initiatives which are being taken is if you really look at assistive technology market, and if you say it's only for disabilities, the market looks very small. The moment we bring elderly, okay, which is actually a much bigger market, it suddenly starts looking very big. Like as it was mentioned in the beginning, that 1 out of 7 people need assistive technology. In fact, the new report which WHO is going to release on disability in a couple of months actually says 30% of the world population need assistive technology. So the moment you bring a much larger scope to assistive technology, then you have a much larger market. And another thing at India, we are also looking at particularly is that when you actually create a new assistive technology, why should it be confined to only your country? And why not look at this from the global market perspective? And I think that will probably attract more and more people to come to assistive technology. And that's where the role of private people will also come.
Thank you so much, sir. We have almost come to the close of today's discussion. I think it's time for a vote of thanks. So I'd request the organizers to deliver that.
Hello, first of all, yeah, thank you very much for this excellent discussion, especially with a lot of new inspirations on potential initiatives also for Friedrich-Naumann Foundation. I think, coming myself from the German labor market organization, one only could state, and that is also was repeated by this discussion, dear employers, especially dear governments, give people with special abilities chances to participate in job alternatives. They are very professional. Most of them, as Mr. Bell already said, are very loyal and faithful. They show a high personal commitment, and most of them also a very, very high motivation for further education and further qualification. And moreover, they also create a positive atmosphere for a lot of the sectors they are working in. So thanks again, especially Mr. Bale and dear panelists for all the good examples you brought, dear Mrs. De Silva. Friedrich-Naumann Foundation South Asia is definitely going to continue this series on possibilities, positive examples of people with special abilities. Thanks again, dear Mr. Pürsün, our keynote speaker, Member of Parliament in the federal state of Hesse, member of the Liberal Party there. Thank you, Mrs. Da Silva from Sri Lanka. Thanks, Professor Rao. Thank you very much, Mr. Otinki from Nepal, and Mr. Bale for your intervention regarding showing the positive example of your cafe. Last but not least, thanks, Mrs. Sengupta. As I said, it would be great if you or some of our dear participants of tonight's interaction could inspire us with some fresh and new ideas. I would only say thank you again to our colleagues from the Munich office for your continuous support. Thank you for Mrs. Shruti Sharma and Mrs. Mishra from our team for being the motors of this event. And esteemed audience, please stay in contact with us, not only in this particular field, but also in other different fields where we interact and try to showcase certain parts of reality here in South Asia. Friedrich-Naumann Foundation, as I said, intends to host similar programs. And please stay in touch with us, especially use our social media channels. So thanks again, especially to Mr. Pürsün and all our panelists. Have a very good evening to all South Asia, and best wishes also from Delhi to our colleagues, friends, and listeners from Europe. Bye and good evening.